Hi, welcome to my channel. Today I'm going to tell you about a real war. Let's begin. Have you ever heard of a tiny kingdom that stood up to the most fearsome empire the world had ever seen? Not once, not twice, but 3 separate times. This isn't a fantasy epic. It's the incredible true story of Vietnam versus the Mongol Empire. In the 13th century, the Mongols, under the leadership of Genghis Khan and his successors, had forged an empire stretching from the Pacific Ocean to the heart of Europe. City after city, kingdom after kingdom fell before their unstoppable cavalry. By the 1250s, the mighty Kublai Khan, grandson of Genghis, had set his sights on the Song dynasty in southern China. To outflank them, he needed a path through the kingdom to the south, known then as Đại Việt. He sent envoys demanding passage for his armies. The Vietnamese Trần Dynasty, led by the legendary Emperor Trần Thái Tông, gave a firm no. They knew allowing the Mongol army into their lands was the same as surrendering. So, in 1258, the first invasion began. A massive Mongol force, led by General Dai, stormed across the border. They were veterans, battle-hardened and confident. They quickly captured the capital, Thang Long, which is modern-day Hanoi. The Vietnamese court was forced to flee. For any other nation, this would have been the end. But the Vietnamese had a plan. They refused to meet the Mongols in a decisive open-field battle. That was the Mongols' game, and they were masters of it. Instead, the Vietnamese commanders, like the brilliant Tran Thursday Co., adopted a strategy of scorched earth. They evacuated the capital, taking all the food and supplies with them, leaving the invaders in an empty, barren city. The Mongols were occupiers of nothing. As the invaders' supply lines stretched thin and their soldiers grew weak from hunger and tropical diseases, the Vietnamese launched a surprise counterattack. The demoralized and starving Mongol army was routed and forced into a humiliating retreat. It was a stunning victory, but everyone knew the Mongols would be back, and they were. 27 years later, in 1285, Kublai Khan, now emperor of the Yuan dynasty in China, was furious. This time, he sent an even larger force, estimated at 500,000 men, led by his own son, Prince Togan. It was one of the largest invasion forces the world had ever seen. Their goal was simple: crush Đại Việt once and for all. Again, the Mongols smashed their way to the capital. And again, the Vietnamese court abandoned it, melting into the countryside. This time, the Vietnamese resistance was led by a figure who would become one of the greatest heroes in their history, General Trần Hưng Đạo. Hung Tao was a master strategist. He understood that to defeat the Mongols, the entire nation had to be united. He famously rallied his troops with a proclamation that stirred the heart of every soldier, asking them if they would stand by and watch their homeland be trampled. The soldiers, inspired, tattooed the words "Sat That," meaning "slay the Mongols," on their arms. The Vietnamese forces used guerrilla tactics, harassing the Mongol supply lines and launching hit-and-run attacks. The huge Mongol army was like a giant beast being stung by 1,000 hornets. The real genius, however, lay in naval warfare. The Mongols had a massive fleet to support their ground troops, sailing down the coast and up the rivers. Trần Hưng Đạo anticipated this. He lured the Mongol fleet into a series of decisive naval battles. At the Battle of Chuang Duong and Ham Tu, the smaller, more agile Vietnamese boats outmaneuvered the large Mongol war junks, inflicting devastating losses. Starved on land and battered at sea, Prince Togon's massive army disintegrated. He himself barely escaped, forced to hide in a bronze container to avoid capture. The second invasion had failed even more spectacularly than the first. But Kublai Khan was a man obsessed. He could not accept defeat at the hands of what he considered a minor kingdom. In 1287, he ordered a third invasion. This one would be the final, ultimate test. He assembled another huge force, paying special attention to his navy, determined to avoid the mistakes of the past. He believed he had learned from his previous failures. What he didn't realize was that the Vietnamese had learned to Trần Hưng Đạo, knew the Mongol fleet would have to sail up the Đằng River to resupply their army and attack the heart of his kingdom. The Đằng was a place of legends. Centuries earlier, the Vietnamese had used it to defeat a Chinese invasion. Trần Hưng Đạo decided to repeat history, but on a grander scale. His plan was brilliant in its simplicity and audacity. He ordered his men to plant massive iron-tipped wooden stakes into the riverbed, hidden just beneath the water's surface at high tide. He then sent a small naval detachment to provoke the Mongol fleet and lure them into his trap. The Mongol admiral, confident in his superior numbers, took the bait. He chased the small Vietnamese flotilla deep into the Đằng River right as the tide was high. Once the entire enemy fleet was inside the prearranged kill zone, the Vietnamese boats turned and fought fiercely, blocking any attempt at retreat. Then the tide began to turn. Literally, as the water level dropped, the massive Mongol war junks were suddenly impaled on the sharpened stakes hidden below. Trapped, immobile, and ripped open, the fleet was a sitting duck. From both banks of the river, Vietnamese forces rained down fire arrows and launched assaults. The once mighty Mongol navy was utterly destroyed. It was a complete and total catastrophe for the invaders. When news of the disaster at Đằng reached the Mongol land army, their morale shattered. Without supplies and with their escape route cut off, they began a desperate and bloody retreat back to China, harassed by Vietnamese forces every step of the way. The third and final Mongol invasion was over. The small kingdom of Đại Việt had defeated the Mongol Empire 3 times. They did it not with overwhelming force, but with unbreakable spirit, brilliant leadership, and a deep understanding of their own land. They proved that courage and cleverness could triumph over sheer numbers. The story of Vietnam's resistance is a timeless testament to the power of a people united in the defense of their home. Thank you so much for watching. If you found this piece of history as fascinating as I do, please hit that like button and subscribe for more stories of incredible triumphs from around the world. See you in the next videos.